The whole earth is at rest and is quiet. They break forth into singing. Yea, the fir trees rejoice at thee, and the cedars of Lebanon, saying, Since thou art laid down, no fellow is come up against us. The glory of Lebanon shall come unto thee, the fir tree, the pine tree, and the box together, to beautify the place of my sanctuary. And I will make the place of my feet glorious.
Because the Lord is going to restore everything. You're going to have a total different vibration on the earth, a total different smell. You're not going to be walking down the street and smell shit and piss, and no foul odors or nothing like that, because the lungs of the earth are going to be given back to it, which is all these trees and all of these flowers, and it's going to be a whole total different vibration. You're going to see the aura and how things are going to change and how elevated things are going to be. Our senses are going to be heightened. Everything about us is going to be glorified.
For behold, I create new heavens and a new earth, and the former shall not be remembered, nor come into mind. But be glad and rejoice forever in that which I create. For behold, I create Jerusalem a rejoicing, and her people a joy. And I will rejoice in Jerusalem, and joy in my people. And the voice of weeping shall be no more heard in her, nor the voice of crying. There shall be no more thence of infant of days, nor an old man that hath not filled his days. For the child shall die 100 years old. But the sinner, being 100 years old, shall be accursed. And they shall build houses and inhabit them, and they shall plant vineyards and eat the fruit of them. They shall not build, and another inhabit. They shall not plant, and another eat. Whereas the days of a tree are the days of my people, and mine elect shall long enjoy the work of their hands. They shall not labor in vain, nor bring forth for trouble, for they are the seed of the blessed of the Lord, and their offspring with them. And it shall come to pass that before they call, I will answer, and while they are yet speaking, I will hear. The wolf and the lamb shall feed together, and the lion shall eat straw like a bullock, and dust shall be the serpent's meat. They shall not hurt nor destroy in all my holy mountain, saith the Lord.
The Lord said that on the Heavenly Father's right hand there are pleasures evermore. And it says that I have not seen, neither ear heard the things that the Lord hath prepared for them that wait for him. There's a whole another world of greatness that awaits us when the kingdom of heaven is established. It's not seen in this society. In this society, we only see carnal things that reason offers in this society. But when the kingdom is established, the Lord is going to open us up to a whole nother world, of pleasure, of knowledge, of wisdom, understanding, can't even be put into words.
All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shah, Bahashem, Rakakodash. Double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, make great examples towards younger brothers. And peace and blessings and salutations to the hopeful leg out there pushing his word in truth and in sincerity across the four winds in the name of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shah. Pushing it up out of here. Shalom to the hopeful leg, the believers, the listeners who have came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shah, Bahashem Kakadash. All right. What I want to get into today is a continuation in the book of 2 Corinthians, all right, chapter 11. Okay, and the theme, of this chapter, dealing with the betrothed, all right, which is the church, which is the hopeful elect, likened to the bride, okay, of Yahweh Bashem Al Shah, okay, and also the suffering, as Apostle Paul, okay, he runs down, his suffering for the church, okay, and when you get into the chapter, we're going to deal, with the whole tradition, of a woman being betrothed, all right, to a man according to our customs. It's always good to get into our customs and tap into our customs, okay, because that brings more of an understanding, into the Bible, understanding our customs, as Israelites, okay. So when you go into the book of Second Corinthians, chapter 11, verse 1, it says, "Would to Most High, all right, would to Most High, ye could bear with me a little in my folly, and indeed bear with me." Okay, now the Apostle Paul, he's also going to go into, these false, all right, apostles, men, that will boast themselves, okay, in their, lineage, and their eloquent speech, okay, and their authority to receive money from the church, so they was pretty robbing them, okay, and lying to them, all right, which sound familiar, okay, so they was, getting money from them, okay, boasting in their authority, okay, boasting in, being these great speakers, and that the spirit was dealing with them, boasting on them being, these mighty Israelites, these mighty Hebrews, okay. So Paul had to deal with that as well, all right, and they were teaching false doctrine, okay. So Apostle Paul, he's likening, his ministry as betrothing a woman, okay, to one husband, because they was teaching other messiahs, they were teaching other gospels, okay. You see, they were teaching other saviors, okay, not Yahweh, okay. So Apostle Paul is likening himself, to a best man that has betrothed, a woman to one husband, okay. So when you go to 2 Corinthians 11:2, which John the Baptist, also, all right, reverence, that custom, dealing with, all right, the church, the believers. Okay, 2 Corinthians 11:2 said, "For I am the house, it's like, for I am jealous over you with godly jealousy. For I have espoused you to one husband, that I may present you as a chaste virgin to Hamashiach." Okay, so when you go into, all right, the church, being like a chaste virgin, all right, for Hamashiach, all right, how does the Lord liken Israel? Okay, when you go to Jeremiah 6, okay, and 2, okay, it says, "I have likened the daughter of Zion to a comely and delicate woman." So the church, all right, was a promise unto Yahweh Shai. Okay, you had the apostles, they were playing the role of the best man, which we're going to get into those customs. Okay, but the church itself was likened unto a comely, a beautiful, and delicate woman. All right, that's how the Lord likened Israel. You see, and their remnant, okay, would be like a betrothed bride unto, okay, Yahweh. Okay, because what had us being punished and scattered as a people, okay, was us going after, okay, other gods, committing what? Spiritual adultery against our power. You see, but through the mercy of Yahweh, okay, we've been allowed to be betrothed, all right, again to our power. And this betrothal period, this grace period is like in the betrothal period, to where we're, as the bride, preparing ourselves, okay, to be joined back, okay, with our husband, okay. When you go to Judges 2:17, it says, "And yet they would not hearken unto their judges, but they went a whoring after other gods, and bowed themselves unto them, and they turned quickly out of the way, all right, which their fathers walked in, obeying All right. It says obeying the commandments of the Lord, but they did not so. Okay. Because, following after these other gods, all right, they came with what? A different culture, a different lifestyle. Okay. Following after other gods by default, it made us disobedient to our power. Following out those other guys put us in a different spirit, to where we wasn't obedient to our power, which the Heavenly Father, like a husband unto us. He provided, all right. He protected, okay, and he would also discipline when need be, okay. So as the Heavenly Father, was likened unto a husband, as he's doing his duties towards us as a people, okay, we went off, we went astray, we went a whoring, okay, playing the harlot, okay, committing spiritual adultery after other gods, okay, just like a woman, when she begins, if she is with her husband, then she begins to deal with another man or other men. Well, guess what? Her respect for her husband leaves. Her behavior changed because she got different spirits on her now. She has a different influence on her now. You know, now she's has different loyalties. You see, her loyalties are split. You see, so as a nation, when we will go after, other gods, okay, it put us in a position of being disobedient. Okay, we had other spirits on us, and as a man, you only want your influence on your wife. You know, you want her, okay, purpose to center around you. Okay, that's why if her, loyalties are split, as a man, as a real man, you will feel some type of way. You wouldn't even want to deal with that situation. That's why the Lord just gave us over to the heathen, because he didn't want that partial, that leftover, obedience. You see, he didn't want, okay, the seconds, of these other guys. Okay, so he let us, go by our way. You know, so let's go here to the Book of Wisdom of Solomon real quick, and let's get this. Just let you know, Israel's biggest sin was spiritual fornication. Okay, this is Wisdom of Solomon 14:11 said, therefore, even upon the idols of the Gentiles, there shall be a visitation, because in the creature of the Most High, they are become an abomination, okay, and stumbling blocks to the souls of men, and a snare to the feet of the unwise. Okay, so idols was always a stumbling block, for the sons of God, even going all the way back to Adam, going back to Genesis, the 6th chapter, all right, going into the time before the flood, okay, and even, the split, of the kingdoms, eventually northern and southern, the northern kingdom, they went directly into idolatry, and eventually the southern kingdom was saturated in idolatry, okay, which caused what the captivities, and leading us to where we are today, okay, but through the grace, provided by Yahweh Shai, okay, the Lord has allowed us to what to be betrothed unto Him again, so this grace period is real vital, all right, in how we prepare ourselves for our husband to be joined back, okay, in the marriage to be joined to our power again. Okay. Verse 12 said, for the devising of idols was the beginning of spiritual fornication, and the invention of them the corruption of life. Okay. You see? So spiritual fornication, okay, began what? The corruption of life. We became corrupted. We became not fit, okay, to be the bride of Yahweh Bashim Shai. We became unfit to represent our power in the earth. Because your husband, your wife, Okay, she will represent you. You know, her conduct, her behavior. You know, and if it's known that she's dealing with other men, that's a shame unto you. You look like a clown. Okay, you see. So the Heavenly Father, you know, when we was in our folly and we was dealing with these other guys, and you know, being influenced by these other guys, you see, He just put us away, man. You know, because we became an embarrassment. Okay, like a whorish woman. You see, but through your house, okay, there has been a grace period to where the whorish woman, okay, is being allowed for to have redemption. You see, and this is why we can't take this grace period lightly, man. You know, that's why you can't serve the Most High and still want to be in the streets, or serve the Most High still want to be a feminist. You know, you can't do that. So you're serving because all that goes back to idolatry, man, Satanism. When you really go into it, especially feminism, that's really rooted in Satanism. Okay, that's why the spirit doesn't deal, all right, with our people. They're trying to do both. Okay, because it's like going after all the guys. You're still giving your energy to another doctrine. Okay, it's like in imagine your woman. You know, she cook you foods that her other man likes. You know, you don't eat those. You don't eat that, but her other man eats it, and she prepared. Okay, she thinking of him. Okay, and she cooking things he like for you. Okay, just to put you know, in the mindset of what we was doing. Okay, by serving other guys, man, extremely disrespectful. Okay, serving other guys is one of the highest forms of disrespect to our power. Okay, so as the Apostle Paul said, I've espoused you to one husband. Okay, because those other men that was teaching, you know, other saviors and other doctrines, man. You know, so Apostle Paul, I'm presenting you so you can be a chaste virgin because we've been born again. You know, we have to keep our minds chaste, which is pure, untainted, okay, by other doctrines, you know, and philosophies, man. Now, when you go into what an ancient Israelite bride will be doing during the betrothal period, okay, so I asked this in the chat. It said in ancient Israel, betrothal, all right, was legally binding. The bride was considered the man's wife, even though they did not live together or consummate the marriage. The betrothal period usually lasted about 1 year. During this time, the bride focused on several key responsibilities. Okay, preparing her dowry. The bride spent much of this period assembling and crafting her personal possessions, including clothing and textiles, embroidered garments, blankets, and bedding, household items, sometimes jewelry. These items, all right, became part of her diary. All right, jumping down, it said demonstrating purity and faithfulness. Purity was essential to the betrothal period. The bride was expected to live, all right, with her parents, avoid compromising situations, maintain a reputation of chastity, remain faithful to the groom. Okay, so the betrothed woman, okay, will be isolated. You know, she won't be out like that. Okay, she won't be in a compromising situation. Okay, she won't be on you know, on No Jumper podcast. Okay, she won't be hanging out with the Crips and Blood. She wouldn't be. Okay, you see, she won't be in a compromising situation. Okay, she would be isolated, man, to be separated. Okay, because she didn't want to compromise herself. All right, maintain a reputation of chastity. Maintain a reputation of chastity, man. Okay, wouldn't even put herself in a position, to create speculation, okay, about her chastity, which her pureness, her being a virgin, man. Okay, remain faithful to the groom. It said during betrothal, marital unfaithfulness was considered adultery, man. So we don't want to be guilty of what spiritual fornication. Okay, that's why you don't go to the church. You still living this club life, and you out, partying out. You putting yourself in a compromising situation. Okay, having these, you're looking at Islamic videos for hours. You see, watching all these other videos and about other doctrine for hours. You'll put yourself in a compromised situation. Okay, we're here to be chaste, keeping our minds pure. Okay, and apt. Okay, to serve our husband, man. Okay, it says the bride was expected to enter her husband's household ready to contribute to its stability. You see, ready to contribute to its stability, man. And we're being prepared, okay, as a church to afford, all right, the household of Yahweh Shah, which is a righteous kingdom, man. Being joint heirs, we're going to aid him. We're going to be like homemakers of the planet Earth, okay, adding to the stability, okay, of a righteous kingdom. All right, it says she will sharpen skills such as managing supplies, grinding grain, baking, cooking, weaving, spinning thread, making clothing. All right, caring for livestock if needed. Is as if the prophets, what did they do? They're caring for the sheep. Okay, we're caring for you know, our husband's sheep, which is the church, preparing for childbirth and childcare. Most of the learning took place from the example of her mother and older female relatives, man. Okay? So she will be groomed up. It'll be a team of women grooming her up. Okay? Just like you have a team of prophets that is grooming up the church. Okay? To serve Yahweh. You see, we're all being taught how to serve Yahweh. Okay, and this, because Christianity taught you how to be rebellious, just like today, most women, their mother and their female relative teach them how to be rebellion to men. Okay, teach them how to do their own thing. All right, teach them to be whores. Okay, well, in spiritually, the church teaches you to be a whore. That's why you celebrate Christmas. That's another God. Celebrate Easter, another God. Go to church on Sunday. It's the spirit of another God. Okay, Mother's Day, it's another God. Okay, so Christianity teaches you to be a whore in the spirit. You know, it says ritual and personal preparation. Some preparation had a ceremonial character. The bride might bathe ritually, prepare perfumes or oils. Okay, learn wedding songs and customs. Anticipate the groom's arrival with her maidens. Okay, that's where you get the parable of the five, all right, wise virgins and the five foolish. Okay, because they would anticipate, the groom to come get the bride and her maidens would go with her. Okay, and they would sing, okay, songs all the way to the wedding chamber back at the groom's father's house. Okay, but you had to have your light, you had to have your lamp ready, some oil, and you had to trim your light. Okay, so your light will stay on. Okay, during that procession back to the bridegroom's father's house. Okay, as your house shine, he's coming to get us. Okay, you see, and we want to be those wise maidens who anticipate the groom's arrival, not get lax because you didn't know when he was coming. Okay, you didn't get a text, okay, or a voice message on the WhatsApp, okay, letting him know he was down the street. Okay, he was just come, so you had to stay ready, just as the scriptures prompt us, to stay ready, to stay on our watch. Okay, it said this is reflected culturally in the Song of Songs and illustrated symbolically in the parable of the 10 virgins, Matthew 25, 1 through 13, which reflects an Israelite wedding procession setting. Okay, so we're bathing ourselves in these oils, these perfumes, and this word. Okay, we're learning what this new song. Okay, and it says, waiting for the groom to complete, all right, the bridal chamber. It says, while the groom was building or preparing the bridal chamber, often in addition to his father's house, the bride lived in a state of expectation, preparation. This wait, all right, gave raise to the theme of vigilance, all right, vigilance, okay, anticipation and readiness. So just as Yahweh Shah, what he say, I go to prepare a place. So the bride would, the groom would go and add a chamber to his father's house, all right, to consummate the marriage. Okay, so when he would be done building those chambers, he would go get his bride. Okay, so just as Yahweh Shah said, well, I go to prepare a place. You see, these other planets are likened unto, in addition to his father's house, man. Man, come on, man. And he's coming to get his bride, the church. You know? So we stay in the spirit of vigilance, anticipation, and readiness, man. Okay? Now it goes down to the duties of the best man. It said the ancient equivalent of a best man, all right, was the Shash Bun. All right, he played a more significant role than the modern best man. Okay, negotiating and supporting. All right, marriage arrangements. Okay, it says initial communication between families, arranging certain elements of the diary and planning the wedding logistics. Okay, escorting the bride and groom during the wedding procession. Okay, the best man will accompany the groom, sometimes help escort the bride to the groom, and this is what Apostle Paul is referring himself to. And this is what John the Revelator referred himself to, as he was getting Israel. He was telling them what to repent, washing them in the water, preparing them what? For the coming of the husband. Okay? So the Apostle Paul, he's telling the church of Corinth, like, look, I'm escorting you to the groom. With this teaching, with these doctrine. Okay, I'm preparing your conduct so I can escort you so I can present you to the groom as a chaste virgin. Okay, and that's in the spirit, having what pure minds. Okay, faithful to one power, Yahweh Shemal Shai. It says, ensure both parties arrive safely and properly, organize, all right, the wedding attendants. Okay, you see that, which is the church, and it says, all right, because on highways and byways, what are we doing? We're bidding to the marriage. Okay, it says, guarding the bride's purity and reputation, vouching for the moral character of the groom, which is Yahweh Shai. And while we constantly teach and preach on Yahweh Shai, we exalt Yahweh Shai. The groom. It says supporting the legitimacy of the marriage. Okay, because this marriage is based off of a lineage. You see, we're being joined to our power based off of promise or contract to a particular lineage, man. And through prophecy, we show that we are those legit, okay, brides spoken of. Okay? We're those brides that were put under the contract. You see? This is legitimate. You see? It says, assuring no accusation arose that would shame either family. So that's why the Apostle Paul is writing these letters to address particular things, protect, the reputation of the bride. Okay, it says supporting the groom during betrothal year, offering counsel, assisting with the construction of the bridal chamber, preparing food or drink for the wedding feast, which is this word, this spiritual buffet. And also the best man will supply the food. Okay, you see, it says helper and gathering guests and organize. All right, the celebration. He was essentially the groom's trusted friend and representative. Okay, so the prophets are likened to representatives of the groom, which is Yahweh Shai. Okay, and we're serving tables. Okay, at the at the wedding, man. And he's supplying the food, the spiritual food. It says stood as a witness, ensured the marriage was properly recognized, facilitated the start of the feast. Okay, with John the Baptist, facilitated the start of the feast. He jumped it off. Sometimes presented or guarded the marriage gift. John the Baptist alludes to this role when he calls himself the friend, okay, of the bridegroom who rejoices to hear the voice, all right, to hear the groom's voice. Okay, you see that? So just a quick summary. The bride during the betrothal period prepared her dowry and household goods, demonstrated purity and fidelity. All right, learned household management skills, made ritual, all right, and personal preparations, waited expectantly for the groom's return. Okay, the best man. Assisted in marriage arrangements, helped with the processions and ceremony, guarded the honor and purity of the marriage, supported the groom during the betrothal year, served as witness and helper at the wedding feast. Okay, so just want to go into them to those customs. Okay, want to get them customs. All right, and now we can go here into the rest of the video. Okay, the rest of the chapter. You see. So this is back in 2 Corinthians 11, okay, and 2 it says, 2 Corinthians 11:2 said, "For I'm jealous over you with godly jealousy, for I have espoused you to one husband, that I might present you as a chaste virgin to Hamashiach." Okay, so you see, that their best man, okay, and their betrothal, okay, dynamic. The Apostle Paul is referring to. It says, "But I fear, least by any means, and the serpent beguiled Eve through his subtlety, so your minds should be corrupted from the simplicity that is in Hamashiach." Okay, so the serpent beguiled Eve, through craft and cunningness. Same way that these niggas come with craft and cunning, as if they have a better way than the simplicity that's in Yahweh Shai. That's why Jake is, wants to have all these profound, you know, prolific breakdowns. Okay, they want to add the gimmicks and the glitz, okay, to the ministry, and it's all just a way to beguile the church, okay, into being disobedient to their husband, okay. And it says, "For if he that cometh preaches another Yahushua, whom we have not preached, or if you receive another spirit which you have not received, or another gospel which you have not accepted, you might well bear with him." Okay, a man teaching you that all nations can make it, teaching you that the nations are gonna be destroyed, that's another gospel. Because the nations aren't part of our inheritance. Okay, they're teaching you another gospel. You see, Jake still call on Christ. That's another deity, man. Okay, and those men that call on Christ, you see, all right, they're lacking in the doctrine. That's another deity that they're dealing with. Okay, and it says, "For I suppose I was not a whit behind, all right, the very chiefest apostles. But though I be rude in speech, yet not in knowledge. But we have been thoroughly made manifest among you in all things." Okay, so Apostle Paul, he was handling the church rough, but he didn't have, the eloquent speech. Okay, these guys claiming themselves to be these super apostles. You see, but he said, "I'm not lacking in knowledge." They know how to. They might know how to, be a better orator and speak with eloquence and these particular things, but they're lacking in knowledge. I'm not lacking in the knowledge of Yahweh. Okay, he says, "Having committed, all right, have I committed an offense in abasing myself, all right, that ye might be exalted, because I have preached to you the gospel of the Most High freely." Okay, so Apostle Paul, he didn't come on no high horse boasting. And remember, Apostle Paul was a Pharisee. Okay, not only a Pharisee, but he was of the higher sect of the Pharisees. They wanted Apostle Paul to be a part of the Sanhedrin, but he didn't come boasting in them accolades. Okay, and he was a free man, a Roman citizen, but he didn't come boasting in accolades, man. Okay, he abased himself, man. That's why Apostle Paul said, "I only knew Yahweh Shai, and Yahweh Shai crucified among you." I didn't come hyping myself up. Okay, I didn't come, with all these fancy stories and big words. I came to you only knowing Yahweh Shai and Yahweh Shai crucified. Okay, I didn't come to throw my authority around, requesting, that y'all, pay me, and he didn't do that. He said he abased himself so that they can be exalted in the knowledge and the understanding. You see, he came with less hassle as possible. Okay, it says, "I rob of the churches, taking wages of them to do you service." Okay, so he was saying, well, look, it's like I was taken from other churches, which means he was just accepting, their charity, their donations, their help. Okay, so he wouldn't have to be a burden to the church of current. All right, because that's what these other men were doing. You see, so Apostle Paul came a different route to let them know, like, this is about the doctrine. This is about you, okay, being betrothed, okay, to Yahweh, being getting prepared to be joined back to your power. Okay, it says, "And when I presented," it says, "and when I was present with you and wanted, I was chargeable to no man for that which was lacking of me. All right, the brethren which came from Macedonia supplied, and in all things I have kept myself from being burdensome unto you, and so I will keep myself." So he was like, I came, to be little burden as possible. So we could just get into this gospel. We can get into the doctrine. It's good news. Okay, it says, "As surely," this is NLT, 2 Corinthians 11:10, "as surely as the truth of Hamashiach is in me, no one in all Greece will ever stop me from boasting about this." Why? Because I don't love you. The Most High knows that I do, but I will continue doing what I have always done. This will undercut those who are looking for an opportunity to boast that their work is just like ours. Because them other guys, they was coming, they was shaking the church down. Okay, see, they wanted the perks of being an apostle. Okay, but they didn't want to deal with the responsibility. You see, they wasn't about the gospel. They just was there for the perks. They would come after the apostle Paul was just like niggas, man. The apostle Paul, through the spirit Yahweh Shema Shai, would establish the church, get it up and going, and these niggas would come right behind them and shake the church down and teach false doctrine and downplay Paul and exalt themselves, man. Okay, that should sound familiar. Okay, today. Okay, it says, "These people are false apostles, They are deceitful workers who disguise themselves as apostles of a Messiah. Okay, but I am not surprised. Even Satan disguises himself as an angel of light. Okay, especially the devil. Esau Edom. He's a major example of it today. He know how to disguise himself as this messenger of light, as this messenger of peace and good news. Okay, and your well-being. Okay, and a lot of these guys, they link to Satan, man. Whether the spirit of Satan just on them, okay, or whether they're linked directly to Esau through sellout deals, man. Okay, verse 15, he says, so it's no wonder that his servants also disguise themselves as servants of righteousness. In the end, they will get the punishment their wicked deeds deserve. Again, I say, don't think that I am a fool to talk like this, but even if I do, listen to me as you would to a foolish person, while I boast a little. So Apostle Paul said, look, they want to boast. Okay, well let's boast in this. Okay, see if they have this report. Such boasting is not from the Lord, but I am acting like a fool. And since others boast about their human achievements, I will too. After all, you think you are so wise, but you enjoy putting up with fools. So Apostle Paul, he's being sarcastic. He's like, well, let me boast too, since y'all love fools so goddamn much. See, so y'all supposed to be so wise, but y'all love, all right, being grifted by fools, getting extorted by fools, but y'all boast to be so wise. Okay, so Paul, like, let me boast like a fool for a minute then. He says you put up with it when someone else, you say you put up with it when someone else enslaves you, take everything you have, takes advantage of you, take control of everything, and then slaps you in the face. Okay? So Apostle Paul, like, y'all, acting like silly hoes out here, man. Just falling for everything, anything, being slapped around in the spirit. Okay? It says, verse 21 says, I'm ashamed to say that we've been too weak to do that, but whatever they dare to boast about, I'm talking, it says, I'm talking like a fool again. I dare to boast about it too. Are they Hebrews? So am I. Are they Israelites? So am I. Are they descendants of Abraham? So am I. Okay? So they want to boast, in lineage. And then the church, they're all Israelites. Okay, he's talking to the church, and these are all Israelites, but these men, they made it seem as they had this superiority because they was of the circumcision, you know, so they will come as if the uncircumcision owed them everything, you know. And it says, are they servants of a Messiah? I know I sound like a madman, but I have served him far more. I have worked harder, been put in prison more often, been whipped times without number, and faced death again and again. 5 different times, all right, the Israelite leaders, all right, gave me 39 lashes. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was stoned. 3 times I was shipwrecked. Once I spent a whole night and day adrift at sea. I have traveled on many long journeys. I have faced danger from rivers and from robbers. I have faced danger from my own people, the Jews, as well as from the Gentiles. I have faced danger in the cities and in the deserts and the seas, and I have faced danger from men who claim to be believers, all right, but are not. I have worked hard and long, enduring many sleepless nights. I have been hungry and thirsty and have not gone, all right, and have often gone without food. I, all right, I have shivered in the cold, okay, without enough clothing to keep warm. All right. Then, besides all this, I have the daily burden of my concern for all the churches. Okay. So, Apostle Paul, like, they're going to boast in their accolades and their superiority and their elegant speech and, their you see, their bloodline, You see, they boast in this thing. I'm gonna boast in my suffering for the church. Okay, in which it was appointed by, okay, Yahweh Shai, even Yahweh Shai himself, spoke about the sufferings that Paul will have to endure. Okay, this is on the book of Acts, chapter 9. Okay, this Acts 9 and 11 said, the Lord said, go over to Straight Street to the house of Judas. When you get there, ask for a man from Tarsus named Saul. He is praying to me right now. I have shown him a vision of a man named Ananias coming in and laying hands on him. All right. So he can see again. But the Lord exclaimed, Ananias, I've heard many people talk about the terrible things that this man has done to believers in Jerusalem. So the Yahushua sent Ananias, his name was Saul then, before it was changed to Paul. And Ananias, like, look, I heard about this guy. And he terrorized the church. Okay, so Yahushua says, and Ananias is saying, and he is authorized by the leading priest to arrest everyone who calls upon your name. But the Lord said, go, for Saul is my chosen instrument, all right, to take my message to the Gentiles and to kings as well as to the people of Israel. So Apostle Paul had a broad office, as he would, his office was to the Israelite foreigners, the Gentiles. He would deal with the circumcision, and he would be in prison where he would be brought before kings and rulers and governors, for the testimony of Yahushua. Verse 16, it's a point, and I will show him how much he must suffer for my name's sake. Okay, so Apostle Paul's suffering, was his badge of authority from Yahushua. That was his badge of authenticity, okay, from Yahushua. And it says, going back to 2 Corinthians 11, okay, 11 and 29, it says, who is weak without me feeling their weakness? Who is led astray and I do not burn with anger? So Paul, like, I got a true attachment to this. How y'all state, y'all how y'all are, it affects me. If y'all down, I'm down. Y'all up, I'm up. Paul was invested. It said, if I must boast, I would rather boast about the things that show how weak I am. The Most High, the Father of our Lord Yahweh Shai, who is worthy of eternal praise, knows I'm not lying. When I was in Damascus, the governor, all right, under King Aretas, kept guards at the city gates to catch me. I had to be lowered in a basket through a window in a city wall to escape from him. So he threw something else in there, like, look, I'm really out here. I'm not. I don't have these extravagant stories. Okay, I'm not an eloquent speaker. Not here to boast to you and hype myself up. I boast in my infirmities and the sufferings. When I say was his badge of authority from Yahweh Shai. Those sufferings, man. So that was the point. Lord will you brothers. All right, and you sisters edified once again. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS, who rule well, teach well, being great examples towards younger brothers, and peace and blessing salutation, hopefully, Shalom.